One of the kind of peculiar decisions I've always made when teaching Introduction to Sociology is where I finally teach culture because culture is supposed to, I guess, technically, I put in like quotations, air quotes, right? Technically supposed to be taught fairly early on. Like, what did you read this week? Like chapter 3 in the textbook. And I've always thought it's kind of more interesting to kind of teach backwards as opposed to starting early on with culture to kind of study different aspects of our culture and then go back to like looking at culture as a whole. So we're going to jump into that. I do want to say before we really get started with some definitions and things, this week's activity as far as the discussion board, right? Because I use the discussion board as I use activities that we would have done in class as discussion board topics is all about really being thoughtful and creating your own culture. And so what I'd want you to do is kind of think through if I could make the world like the extra awesome place. I mean, the world can be an awesome place, so, although nowadays there's definitely some unforeseen challenges that we've never faced before. But if I could really think about the way that the education institution or the family or the economy should be, that's kind of what this is. It doesn't have to all be, exceptionally utopian, but and quite honestly, it can be creative. A lot of times when students do this together as a group, there's a lot of humor in this. And they'll be like, our economy runs on bananas and everybody trades bananas. And if I were to go, well, that's weird. Why would you do that? You will have an argument that I will present to you momentarily that is something that you also need to use in the discussion board. That I'm not allowed to say that that's weird because that would be ethnocentric, one of the words that's coming at you in a second. Okay, first, a definition of culture. It's the things that people pass down to children. It's where so many of our norms, which you've already covered with socialization, and the ways that people look at the world. It encompasses a heck of a lot. And there's two aspects of it. So there's material and non-material. So material, as you can see, is the stuff, right? It's possibly the clothing, the food that is part of our culture. But then there's non-material, which is the I don't know, emotions, behaviors, the thought processes, the traditions. Those aren't necessarily tangible that you can hold in your hand, but they very much exist and have a ton of power around. Okay, that word that I just mentioned a second ago, ethnocentric, right? So ethnocentrism, and this is one of the things I really, really kind of want you to carry with you and think through often in just going forward in your life. I think that this is one of those moments, much like structure and agency and things along those lines, that it just much like Hirsky's control theory is a real moment to kind of really constantly challenge the world that we live in. So ethnocentrism, and this is probably a term that some of you hopefully have familiarity with. It's when you're judgmental. You basically have that moment, just like I said, if I were in class and students were like, our economy is developed all on bananas, and that's what we, buy our goods with is bananas. And if I were to stand there and be like, well, that's bizarre, that's weird, why would you do that? I'm being ethnocentric because I'm using my own cultural beliefs where we use paper dollars to judge a culture that uses bananas, right? I didn't really think I'd be saying the word bananas this much in this lecture, but here we are. Um, there's this huge part of ethnocentrism that is, it's a negative judgment. It's like, you're like, ew. Think through, I don't know, if I were to invite you over to my home and I were to serve you a delicacy in my culture, like just the ultimate experience as far as my culture is concerned. And it's like, chocolate covered cockroaches or something. And you're like, oh, I wouldn't eat those. Technically, you're being ethnocentric because there's a whole culture of people that think these are the most amazing things ever. Ethnocentrism can be hard sometimes, like because there's a lot to sometimes wrap your head around with other cultural decisions. But the idea then is to be culturally relative and try to understand without making judgments or comparisons. So try to learn and try to have a sense of what other people really value, right? What other people's traditions are that might seem like something that you would not consider doing, whatever it may be. So, one other thing I want to cover, and this is going to be a pretty quick little lecture because we're pretty much almost done, is the idea of subcultures. And the image I'm going to show you in a second is intended to be humorous, but the various little aspects of like kind of, well, you can see hipster is one of them. These kind of little aspects of like what infiltrate our life as far as our material and non-material aspects, whether it's our clothing, whether it's the music we listen to, whether it's the activities that we do, things along those lines. And granted, this is done humor. This is the idea here is just humor, but subcultures are very, very real. Right. So some of you totally know the entire kind of culture of, I don't know, clubbing or concert going or car repairs or car building or makeup or fashion, all these different things. And so I'm going to share with you one of my subcultures. And so here I've got a couple of things. And if I were in class right now, I actually bring these to class and show everybody and have you try and guess what the heck they are. So here's the first one. Any ideas? This is my subculture in life. This is like my activity, my hobby that I know a heck of a lot about. And I know you're not going to judge me because that would be being ethnocentric and you would never do that. Okay, so this is a Scotch ATG 714, as you can see, and it's sizable. Like it's, if I were to hold it up next to my hand, it's actually, I think, a little bit bigger than my hand. And it's actually framing adhesive. My hobby is not framing things, but the idea with framing adhesive, number one, it comes on this gigantic roll, and then it's also acid-free, which is really, really important when you're a paper crafter like me. This is a crocodile, right? And this, again, I actually usually bring the smaller one because, of course, I have multiple sizes. This is a hole punch that you can put like anywhere. That's why it's so deep. This thing, actually, if I were to bring it, it's about, I don't know, 13 inches long or so. I mean, it's a gigantic like tool. And again, it's so you can punch holes in all different kinds of materials and you can place them. Think about a traditional hole puncher that only gives you maybe like even a half inch of space. This one you can like shove into lots of different things. So did you ever know you needed one of those? You do. You don't, but I did. And so think about the people that share my like hobby of paper crafting or scrapbooking. That's what this is coming from, card making and things. Like we could talk about the Scotch ATG, 714, and do you have the 1/4 inch versus the 1/2 inch? And what's the crocodile most recently, I kid you not, came out with a hole puncher that looks totally different than this, but punches holes in 5 different sizes. It's just so exciting. This is a like combination of various things I've made over the years. So just cards and gifts for teachers and wrapping gifts and scrapbook pages and trying to make planners look cute. Like I love all this stuff. Like it just makes me so happy. Like I just want my life to look like a Pinterest board at all times. It's one of my goals. Because it just, yeah, makes me happy. And so crafting, paper crafting and just crafting in general is something I've always loved. And so that is my subculture. And if you are a person that loves like planner stuff or crafting in any kind, like, and I have students that are super cool like that. Um, that, I can totally engage with you and talk about various things and talk about, do you follow this particular person on Instagram or did you know about this company or all those types of things. That's what a subculture is. So I want you to think about like what subcultures do you maybe participate in? What subcultures are right around you that you see other people participate in? What subcultures do you want to participate in that you've always secretly wanted to do more of and you maybe haven't? Because that's a really awesome aspect of our life. And just remember, no matter what it is, you don't want to be ethnocentric about it.